Turel and his clan territory were one of the obvious absences from the retail version of Soul Reaver. Turel appears in the opening sequence, carries Raziel to his death, and then is not seen or mentioned again. At the same time, his progeny, the Turelim, are the most powerful vampires in the game, and one guards the tomb of the Seraphan and a relic granting Raziel the ability to use telekinetic force projectiles. Like his brothers, the Turelim territory was planned to be visited by Raziel to slay its master and gain an ability before it ended up being cut. Eventually, Soul Reaver 2 would feature a human Turel along with his brothers and reiterated that the vampire Turel had escaped Raziel's vengeance, before Defiance finally showed Raziel catching up with his wayward brother. But what of the original vision of Turel? Soon after the release of Soul Reaver 1, it was discovered that his dialogue had been repurposed for the Tomb Guardian, and with time, various images and even video footage emerged, providing snippets of information about the territory, but never the full picture, until now. The first major surprise of Turel's clan territory is its location. Long suspected to have branched off from the Morlock area outside the Oracle's cave, potentially using some of the dead-end caves or high structures around, the Alpha demonstrates this was only partially true. Turel's territory actually wholly takes the place of the Oracle's cave, and has the codename Lair. In the original planning, the Oracle's cave is instead reached through the Doomahim ruined city, an arrangement which actually fits the Blood Omen maps of Nosgoth far better. Those dead-end caves, meanwhile, contain other bonuses, but that's a story for another time. Notably, the area outside Turel's features a number of high ledges, even into retail, potentially indicating more was planned for the area, and these had initially been suspected to lead to Turel's until the exposure of the Alpha. A high door is present above the entrance to the territory, suspected to be something of a backdoor exit, which leads to a series of high platforms. The door doesn't appear to connect to anything inside the smokestack, and it's unclear where the platforms were intended to lead, but they may have led to a collectible further along the canyon. One platform is particularly noticeable due to its size and prominence. In this version of the game, nothing blocks the way to the Turelim territory, but the player was intended to have just defeated the priestess and gained the possession ability, and a high ledge like this one would be a suitable place for a possession puzzle, possibly involving Turelim on the ledge guarding a switch to open the door to the territory. Entering Turel's territory leads to another big surprise, and one of the most striking features of the area: a large and impressive looking orrery. This breathtaking sight forms the basis of the puzzles in the area and will be revisited several times through the level. Many doors are positioned around the orrery, but it's intended at this stage that only one is open. The entire goal of the Turelim territory ultimately revolves around the activation of the orrery, which in turn activates the large turbine in the main chamber of the smokestack. That is achieved by pulling 3 levers, each placed on the individual blades of the smokestack propellers, which open side rooms neighbouring the orrery. Moving on takes us to the next impressive area, this time a much more recognisable and familiar location, the legendary smokestack. The smokestack itself forms part of the backstory to Soul Reaver, and the area can be seen in the opening cutscene as well as making a cameo in the background to the Turelim Crucible level in the cancelled multiplayer Nosgoth. Images of the area were known to exist and appeared in early magazine previews, but this is the first time it's been playable. Ultimately planned to be the vehicle that allows Raziel to access Kain's retreat, the smokestack also forms something of a hub for the level, being frequently revisited as Raziel ascends Turel's lair and forming the basis of the underlying puzzle of the area. Jumping through the bottom of the smokestack, potentially in Spectral, leads to the next area, Layer 1. Again, this location is somewhat familiar, having appeared in demo videos, and consists of a ramped walkway suspended high over a lava pit. Notably, the lava is different to that of the smokestack, and this is suspected to be an insta-kill. Soon we again return to the smokestack and our first lever, which opens the door to the next area and unlocks a door below at the orrery. The next area, Lair 4, has also made some appearances in video. Notably, this area contains some high double doors which are intended to be locked initially and impassable until you have the amplified projectile. The cistern is another interesting room. Here you are intended to use possession, which doesn't properly work, to take control of the Turel in the area and use him to activate a lever. This allows you to reach a crank and use it to flood the area. About halfway through the smokestack we reach Turel's chamber. After activating the cistern which flooded the room, Raziel could swim to the pipe opening to get to Turel's audience chamber. Unfortunately there are no cutscenes here, most of the battle is non-functional and Turel remains static, although his animations do exist buried in the code. Piecing together what is known about the battle and what can be triggered, we know that Raziel would try to leave through the big door to his right, but would be stopped by Turel. Raziel would defeat him by luring him into the supporting pillars. Cracks would appear in the ceiling, and after the last pillar was destroyed, water would pour out of the cistern onto Turel, killing him in the process, and allowing Raziel to gain the amplified force projectile ability. Unlike the other levels, this was not the end of the stage. Continuing on, Raziel would then be able to open the giant doors with his amplified telekinetic ability, and emerge back to a Lair 11, and proceed to Lair 4, where he could open the large double doors with his new TK projectile. They would then fly open, and he could now access the rest of the smokestack and another lever, which opened the next area and another orrery door. The next room of interest has a platform suspended over water and what appears to be cocoons with pupating Turel. Raziel could either sneak past them or utilise his enhanced TK and shoot the gap in the ceiling to allow sunlight rays to stream in. Filling the pool with more water makes it possible for Raziel to swim and jump to the next area. Another return to the smokestack beckoned, along with the final lever and orrery door. With the orrery doors now opened, Raziel could travel back down and reach 3 upper chambers overlooking the orrery on different sides, each containing a dial which would activate a wheel of the orrery. Raziel had to constrict each dial, and once all 3 dials had been constricted, the blades of the smokestack propellers would begin to spin. With the orrery doors now opened, Raziel could travel back down and reach 3 upper chambers overlooking the orrery on different sides, each containing a dial which would activate a wheel of the orrery. Raziel had to constrict each dial, and once all 3 had been constricted, he could then constrict the orrery itself, causing it to spin, and in turn making the fan blades of the smokestack rotate. Returning to the smokestack, Raziel could now glide in the room and be propelled upwards by the updraft to reach the final area of the game, Kain's mountain retreat.